Welcome back, Movie Misfits. Today's Throwback Thursday, which also means another round of Junk Drawer Flicks. So let's take a look in our junk drawer and see what we got today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. Vampire in Brooklyn. Vampire in Brooklyn was released in 1995, directed by Wes Craven, and the screenplay was also written by Charlie Murphy, Chris Parker, and Michael Lucker. Vampire in Brooklyn also has an all-star cast, starring Eddie Murphy, Angela Bassett, Kadeem Hardison, John Witherspoon, Alan Payne, Zake Smokai, Joanna Cassidy, Mitch Pileggi, and Jesus Garcia. Vampire Brooklyn is a horror comedy. Now, before we go in deep in review, let's take a look at the trailer.
For centuries, they have roamed the earth. Fearsome creatures of the night, endlessly seeking to satisfy an unyielding hunger. Now, the world's last vampire is about to encounter something infinitely more terrifying than himself. Brooklyn.
Interesting. I've been stabbed, and I've been hanged. Even broken on the rack once, but I've never been shot before. It kind of itches a little.
Paramount Pictures presents...
If you're hungry, I'll run you down to KFC down the street and hit you off with a 2-piece.
I already had to tell you.
Eddie Murphy.
Everything! Come on! Move it! Yeah, right. There's a lot of love in this room. Look at this.
And Eddie Murphy.
Bottom line, brothers and sisters, what I'm trying to tell you tonight, that evil is good. Let me hear y'all say it. Evil is good. That's right.
If he fails here...
Quickest way to a woman's heart? Through the church.
It's actually through the ribcage, but that's a bit messy.
Vampire in Brooklyn.
Now, before I talk about this movie, I have been a big fan of this film since 1995, since I rented it at the video store. I thought this movie was great then, and I think it's even more great now. So, in a nutshell, Eddie Murphy plays the last vampire, and is from the Bermuda Triangle, and he comes to Brooklyn to search for a new bride. So I will say that the movie, the tone is very horror, and it's also very comedy. And the movie does kind of go back and forth between the tones. It goes very hard comedy, and sometimes it goes very horror. It kind of goes back and forth. It's kind of doing this the whole time. However, I will say the horror part, the horror element of this movie is good. And also the comedy parts are on point. We also had other films like American Werewolf in London that knew how to do the balance. Angela Bassett plays a detective who also believes in the supernatural and also believes that there's something supernatural afoot that is now taking place in Brooklyn. However, her partner, Justice, played by Alan Payne, believes that this is more cut and dry, more like a murder, and that's all it is. However, there's more bodies piling up, and Angela Bassett is more leaning and more open to the fact there's something supernatural coming ahead. And what do all vampires have besides coffins? They always have a ghoul. And Kadeem ends up being Maximilian's ghoul. Maximilian being Eddie Murphy. Kadeem is very funny in this film. He plays a very interesting ghoul, more about Kadeem's character, that each time we see him, he's decomposing more and more. Brings a horror element to his character. Kadeem is kind of like Jack from American Werewolf in London, where every time we see him, he's decomposing more and more. However, he still managed to keep his comedic chops in this film. He's actually very funny. We're then brought to another great character in this film, John Witherspoon, who basically is playing himself. However, he plays the part very, very well and is very, very funny in this movie. Every time he's on screen, he has memorable lines and has memorable comedic timing as well.
Ahoy, motherfucker!
I will say when his character is in the scene, it brings more comedic element to the film, not so much of the horror. It's more straight comedy. When he's on screen, he brings the laughs with him, of course. However, every time he sees the ghoul character and he watches him decompose also, just like we are the audience, he tends to kind of shrug it off like nothing, like, oh, your arm's falling off again. Well, what you gonna do? However, in the beginning of the film, he's more of a terrified character. He's more scared of what's going on because he's just seen a wolf transform into a vampire, so he's actually very terrified. However, as the movie goes along, He sees the ghoul character, and like I said, he just sees him decomposing more and more and kind of just shrugs it off with a joke. It's fine with me. The man is funny. I don't care. Every time he's on screen, I'm having a hoot. One thing I appreciate about this film more now than I did as a kid when I first saw this film, the attention to detail that the writers did have as far as vampire lore. Example, something that I've seen more consistently recently in vampire movies, especially with Bram Stoker Dracula and also the Dracula series that was on Netflix. I have also noticed that vampires in the stories, they also like to have soil of their native earth in their coffins with them to help preserve them. I never noticed this as a child before, because obviously I didn't know and didn't think about it. But now watching this film, there is a scene where Eddie Murphy is in a coffin, and while he's laying in a coffin, you can see that he has sand over his body. As a kid, I didn't get that. I was like, Adoy, he brought sand from his native land, which would be somewhere in the islands of the Bermuda Triangle. I thought that was actually pretty cool. Kudos to Charlie Murphy and the writers on this film, because that's a cool little thing to add. I'm sure most people did not notice. Now, going back to the islands of the Bermuda Triangle, that brings me back to another character in this film, Dr. Zico, played by Zakes Mukai, who's actually very cool in this film. He has a very small part, but it's a much needed part. This character gives some exposition basically explaining that he is from the islands of the Bermuda Triangle and also that there are many vampires there as well, and that he's also met one in the past. He basically explains the vampire lore to Angela Bassett and her partner Justice, played by Alan Payne, and basically in a nutshell tells him, well, garlic and stake to the heart will kill a vampire. I would say watching this film again in the more recent years, I would say Eddie Murphy deserves a lot more credit. The man does a really good job, not only with the comedic parts, of course, however, with the character of Maximilian, the last vampire. Eddie Murphy plays a very suave vampire, as we would expect, and he has a really cool accent in this film, and he plays the straight part of the suave vampire very, very well. He doesn't really go into comedic timing, quick little one-liners here and there, but does not go into any crazy character traits. However, when Maximilian transforms into another character that potentially has evil inside them, such as the preacher or as the Italian mobster guy, he plays those parts so well. He has some of the greatest lines as the preacher himself. They are very funny. I mean, it's like something you would see out of a typical old Eddie Murphy movie. The man could do many voices and many different characters. When he plays the Italian mob character, I feel like that's something out of either Delirious or Raw. I feel like that impression was something out of that skit over there. So he does a really good job as transforming himself into these different characters. So if I have any problems with this film, I don't mind the tone struggle, because like I said, it kind of does this back and forth between being very comedic and also being very horror. I feel like the horror elements are very good. The makeup effects are very good in this film. The practical effects that they use on Eddie Murphy are very good. And we have some great practical effects in this movie, and I really do enjoy watching it. I would say my only critique in this film, in a negative at all, would probably be the music score. I kind of feel like the music score in this film, it's a little too on the corny side. There's a scary running shot. However, the tone in the music is kind of like almost kind of funny. It's almost kind of comedic. There's a shot where Angela Bassett's running, screaming because she thinks she's becoming a vampire. It's almost, with the music and the way she's running, almost kind of looks like Phoebe running down the road. That would be my only complaint, is the music score, because it just kind of, the music score just has like a kind of like a corny factor. If they would have changed the score maybe, make it more punchy, I think it would have had a big difference on the film. And this being a Wes Craven film, I feel like he did take a big chance, because this is not really something that he would do normally. I feel like this is more of a John Landis thing, because Eddie Murphy and John Landis have worked so well together before in the past. And if Eddie Murphy's doing multiple characters, if you get a John Landis, you also get a Rick Baker. So I'm kind of wondering if there's more of a background story to why Eddie Murphy reached out to Wes Craven as opposed to John Landis. That is something I would really like to know. I would really want to know that information, because I think there's probably something to it that we don't know. But overall, Vampire in Brooklyn deserves more respect than it gets. I would say definitely check it out. It's currently streaming right now on Amazon Prime. It's off and on Amazon Prime. It'll probably be on for hopefully another month, and they'll probably take it off and then bring it back on in a few months. But I would definitely check it out. It's definitely worth the watch. We get classic funny Eddie Murphy in here. We also get a different side of Eddie Murphy too. Like I said, when he's playing his suave vampire character, he plays it very well. We also get to see Eddie Murphy play some cool characters alongside the vampire character. Great makeup effects. Angela Bassett is great in it. Everyone's pretty good in this film. John Witherspoon is really funny as well. So I would definitely check it out. If you're a vampire fan and never seen it, check it out. It's worth a watch. I'm Mike the Movie Misfit, and I'll see you at the movies whenever. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe on my page. All right, thanks a lot.
Ass is good. Evil's good and ass is good. And if you get you a piece of evil ass, whoo!